And so going throughout the educational system, I never had a voice, and I never had a voice at the home. So every single day that I went to class, it was a struggle for me to stay focused because all I could think about was what was going on at home. I feared for my life and that of my brothers and my mother. So when my teacher would ask me why I didn't turn in my homework, I couldn't tell her. All I could tell my teachers was that I don't care about school. I come here to have fun and that's it. And eventually, the conflict with my stepfather would grow to the point where I decided that in 6th grade I was going to commit suicide. I was a student at Collins Middle School. I was in in-house suspension when I wrote my first suicide note, and I was really set on doing this, but really what it was a cry for help. And fortunately, a student had picked up the note that I left in the barrel and had turned it into the principal at the time, Mary Manning, and the next day I was called into the office, and she was able to intervene. And from there, I was hospitalized for about 4 days, and I felt great in that hospital. I felt safe for the first time in a long time because I didn't have to worry about my stepfather. But he would visit with my mother and my brothers, and I knew that we weren't actually safe. That if I didn't go back home, something could happen to them, especially if I spoke out about what was actually going on at home. See, the thing with kids that live in traumatic homes is that they know what the consequences are of telling someone what's going on. The family will most likely be broken up. Maybe that individual will be removed from the house, or things could just get worse. And that was my biggest fear. So I ended up returning home, and for the next few months, there was nothing but contention between myself and my stepfather. Things got violent. One day, I approached my mother and I told her exactly what was going on when she would leave and go to work. That he would abuse us, that he would do things like lock us in the basement when he didn't want to hear from us anymore. And my mother decided to confront my stepfather. And he decided that he was going to kill her. And I remember seeing him choking her on the staircase, thinking to myself that my mother's going to die and that it's all because of me. So I picked up the phone and I threatened my stepfather. I said, I'm going to call the police. And he came after me, started choking me instead. He was hell-bent on killing me. Unfortunately, my mother regained her strength and was able to get him off of me, and he fled the house. And then after that, decided that he could no longer stay with us until things had cooled down between himself and myself, and he went to the Dominican Republic. Unfortunately, my stepfather never returned, but the trauma of living in a household filled with violence stayed with me. And it was around that summertime that I actually engaged with Leap for Education for the first time. A couple of my friends had approached me to tell me that there was this cool place that we could go and use computers and play games. And when my stepfather was around, we were never allowed to leave the house. As soon as we got home from school, this is where we were to remain under his watchful eye. And I was so excited about the opportunity to go to Leap. And as soon as I walked in there, I was engaged by a woman named Linda Saris. And Linda, the first thing I believe she asked me was, so do you have any homework? To which I responded, no, but I would really love to use some computers. So I signed up for the program, and the thing that Linda would quickly learn about me, although my stepfather would never return to the United States, was that every single time that I would come for after-school help, that there was going to be an episode, that I would continuously be angry and disrupt programming because I just couldn't deal with the trauma that I had experienced. And that continued for a very long time. And when things finally got better is when Linda started bringing in different mentors to our programs, like Marshall Bradstreet, a man that has worked with countless boys and girls clubs and youth-serving organizations, some different male role models. I remember a volunteer named Manny who kind of took me under his wing. And male role models for me were few and far between, so when they did come, I used to latch on to them like glue. And when I got to high school, I never really had thoughts about my education. I didn't think that I was ever going to go to college. My mother's education stopped in the 6th grade, and for me, I was set on dropping out at 16. And it was around sophomore year of high school when my anger would get the best of me. I was being disruptive in class, and my teacher had called me out, and I decided that this is intolerable. So I started yelling at her, and she kicked me out, and I went to the office, and I was supposed to be taking a quiz that day, but that didn't happen. So she said, if you want to take the quiz, you need to come after school so that we can talk. And me being a 16-year-old, arrogant as most 16-year-olds are, I thought, okay, great. I'm going to be free here, and I can go take this quiz, and everything's going to be just fine. But what I didn't know was that that teacher was going to tell me exactly what I needed to be told, which was that I had no right to disrupt the learning environment, that I was a bully, and that I needed to change my actions, and that she was not going to allow me to take that test. She stood up to me. And I responded by being angry. I was little Manny again. I picked up 2 chemistry tables, I slammed them to the ground, and I walked out. Now, I can't remember all the details, but what I do know is that I scared that teacher. She went and she told the dean at the time, Mr. Chevry, and he called my house to tell me that I would be suspended for 10 days. A police officer that we are sorely going to miss, Officer Fecta, who's the community police officer. He works with school resource officer. He works closely with the Salem Public Schools. He came to visit my house, and he really wanted to know my side of the story. And Officer Fecta and I had a very long talk about myself and my image, and he was willing to give me a second chance because the school was ready to press assault charges against me for what I had done. And I worked with Officer Fecto to write an apology letter, and he was really my advocate to the public schools, and I was able to come back. But when you do something like that, the first thing that you need to think about is your image and how you're going to change. And for me, I had no plan whatsoever. But fortunately, it was around that same time that I would meet another mentor named Andre Daly, who was then the teen director of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Salem. And Andre was instrumental in changing my life because he was always present, and he was that male role model that I was seeking to replace my father. And so Andre, what he did was he took me under his wing, and he used the game of basketball to teach me life lessons. See, I had never met a man of color that had gone to college. And Andre, he went to Rhode Island College, he went to RCC, and he had so many different life experiences, and we would just swap stories. He would talk to me about his morals, his values, how he came to understand them, and how he changed his own life. And that really inspired me to want to be better, and it really started to culminate with a leadership role on the basketball team. Andre decided that he wanted to make me his captain. And when I tell you that I'm not very good at basketball, if you go to Salem Access Television, you can watch a short video of me breaking both my wrists this past summer playing basketball. But Andre saw something in me, and that it was that my peers gravitated towards me. And he told me that I had a responsibility, not just to myself, but to my community, to use my voice, to use my story, to use the skills that I was acquiring in them, and to mentor others and to speak up to adults about some of the issues that we were facing. And he also told me, Manny, if you want to go somewhere in life, education is the key moving forward. But when we're having this conversation, I have a 2.3 GPA. As Jasenia will gladly tell any college success student, you need a 3.0 to qualify for most scholarships. And my dream was to go to Northeastern University. Andre had taken me on a trip there, and I said, this place is awesome. They have grass. I want to go where there's grass. But I knew that Northeastern was out of reach. In order to get into Northeastern University, you needed about a 2,000 on your SAT scores, and you needed a 3.7 GPA. And Jasenia and I, we did the math, and there was just no way it was going to happen. But Andre's own story of transferring from RCC to Rhode Island College, and then having an opportunity to play at Brown if he desired it, and then Jasenia telling me that there was a path forward if I did well at a different school like North Shore Community College or Salem State, that Northeastern or Suffolk or BU, even Harvard was within my reach, set a fire in my belly, and I said, okay, I think I can do this. Now, Jasenia had mentioned earlier that Linda Saris is my mentor and that she inspired me because we were watching the 2008 elections, and that's what got me into politics and public service. And that story is so integral because a lot of young people, when we're going through the education system, we're not really thinking about what our college majors are going to be. And we don't really have an understanding of the real world and how it works. So for Linda to sit there with me while I'm starting to turn on my mind to her and being interested in college, and to have a conversation about the electoral process and say, well, these are the types of things that you could do if you were a political science major, it connected the educational concepts to something practical for me. And that was really eye-opening, because I could see that I was incredibly passionate about politics and public service. So why not try this out? So by the end of senior year, I was taking a comparative politics class, and I got a 98 in it. I ended senior year with a 3.6 GPA, and I was setting myself up for success in college. And the thing that I learned throughout high school was that you need to engage in different after-school programs, because the people that are there are going to become your social capital.